Boker Tov, everyone. Good to see you. Good to see you. For the past 40 days, we have been on a journey. This journey started back at the beginning of the Hebrew month of Elul on August 9th. Throughout this time, we have been looking inward. We have been asking ourselves, how can we be better people? What have we been through this year that has contributed to our experience? I imagine each one of us could write a book about that. How can we repair our relationships with each other and with God and with ourselves? This is a lot, but that's what today is all about. I mentioned Rabbi David Wolpe last night. It was a great article. There was a lot in there, so I'm going to quote again from him this morning. And he writes about this teshuvah process. He said, "There will always be things that we cannot fully forgive, and people who do not deserve to be restored to good reputation. And forgiving someone does not necessarily mean readmitting that person to our life. In most cases, however, Jewish teachings insist that fair judgment does not require damnation. Judaism, like many other religions in the world, maintain that human beings are capable of transformation. For example, one of the figures of the Talmud, Reish Lakish, began as a bandit and became one of the greatest rabbis of his age. His conversion was fueled by the belief of another rabbi, Rabbi Yochanan, who saw potential in him. The more we believe in judging by potential, that what we do is not the sum of who we can be, the more likely we are to be able to create a society that can help people move past shame. So as we're judging ourselves, as we're judging our relationships and our experiences, let's judge it by the potential that we think that we can have, not by what we've done in the past, but who we think we can be moving forward. We're going to begin our service this morning on page 138, singing Ma Tovu together.
Ma
We are now going to turn to page 140 and sing together Esainai, Psalm 121, asking, "From where does my help come? My help comes from God." Turn now to page 157. The gift of honor, Ben Azai used to say, "Treat no one with scorn. Regard nothing as useless. For all people have their moment, and all things have their place. Diamonds, when found in the ground, may look like worthless pieces of glass. It takes an expert to see the precious gem that is hidden within. Become an expert in human beings. Learn to see each one as a diamond in the rough. Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh chol basar umafli la'asot." One of the most powerful aspects of the High Holy Days is praying with others, whether in person or virtually. It is amazing to think about so many people saying the same words at the same time, honoring the same tradition. Mordechai Kaplan, the founder of Reconstructionist Judaism, said, "When we worship in public, we know our life is part of a larger life, a wave of an ocean of being. The firsthand experience of that larger life, which is God." Let us join now together in proclaiming God's oneness through the Baruch Hu and the Shema and the V'ahavta, beginning on page 178. Please rise if you are able.
We continue now on page 185. Hineni, behold, I stand ready to listen and learn, to embrace in thought and in deed, to proclaim with a whole heart the sacred unity of all being. We turn now to page 186 for Shema.
בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We turn now to page 197 for the reading on the page. Who is like you among the silent, mute and inscrutable, you witness our pain? Once upon a time the sea was split and Israel marveled at your outstretched arm. How many have cried out since then? How many have sunk beneath the waves? Centuries of innocent blood lives lost to hunger, war, to cruelty or indifference, and those who died with your name on their lips. And still they perish in distant lands, and still they languish on our chilly streets. Your creatures are drowning even now, so why should we sing? Ever silent, hiding out in history, you have your reasons, or so they say. You left us on our own, so let us give you leave. Withdraw into yourself. Withhold your saving power. And we will live on memories of joy, and stubborn and stiff-necked will cling to hope, and gather strength to fight the pharaohs when we must, and hold fast to freedom and celebrate in song, and vow that we will never be among the silent. Mi Chamocha is found on page 196.
Good morning, friends. We're now on page 198, and we'll begin the Amidah. Please rise if able.
בחיי הקולות הרוב להושיע.
מחכה חיים בחסד, מחכה חיים בחסד, סומך נופלים ורופך חולים, ומתיר אסורים.
מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומידות אלוה, מלך מליט ולחיים ומצמיח ישוע. בנאמנותו להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
Friends, we can be seated. Page 205, a kavanah, a meditation before the Unatana Tokef prayer. Once we stop acting like God, we might allow God's presence to be more active in our lives. Belief in God is difficult for many of us, but it is impossible if we consider ourselves the highest power in the universe. Being humble enough to consider that there may be something greater than we are is a first step toward faith. And if we believe that there could be a power greater than we might turn to that power for strength, comfort, guidance, and love when we are facing moments of our own helplessness. As the psalmist says, God is our refuge and stronghold, a help in trouble, very near. Therefore we are not afraid, though the earth reels, though mountains topple into the sea. Or more famously, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Not being God allows us to experience what a relationship with the real God might be like. Page 208, Unatana Tokef.
Dayan umohiach Ve'odei va'ed ve'hotem ve'hotem ve'sofer u'maleh v'tistor kol ha'ishat v'tiftar et sefer ha'zichronot ובשופר גדול ייתקע.
Page 209. Today we call it by its rightful name, a day of dread, Nora the Ayom, unwelcome visitor, for we want to live in a sunny world where God is love and all endings are happy. But the drumbeat sounds and the words tumble down, and even the angels tremble with fear. For all things are judged, and all things will pass, and life ends in a heartbeat, and death knows our name. At the start of the year, in the season of truth, comes the day of remembrance for all we forget and all we deny. And we fall on our knees in the depths of our hearts, for we know that the bell tolls for us. The words are old, and the language was theirs, but the call is real, and the message is ours. Take hold of your life while you still have the chance. For your story will end, and it might be this year in a way you don't know. Take hold of your life. Make things right while you can. And don't miss the call of the day of dread. Page 213. An empty page, an open book. A day of ultimate questions. Will I still be here next year at this time with the ones I love beside me? What is in store for my family? And what will become of my friends? Who will have reason to celebrate? Who will contend with grief? New love, new babies, marriages deepening or breaking apart. Prosperity, struggle, reversals of fortune, illness, and health await us. Who will be missing when we gather next? Who will stand apart? Who will be estranged? And who will have joined us, enriching our community? At the edge of the unknown, we tremble. What lies ahead for all of us? An empty page, an open book. Nothing is written and nothing is sealed. Flesh and blood, frail creatures, our lives are fleeting and subject to chance. Yet this we possess, the strength to persist, to prevail, to comfort one another in the dark. Prayer, right action, a turning toward the good. These give us hope and help us bear the pain of life. And now I'd like to introduce our synagogue president, John Herstein, with a pre-recorded message.
Good morning and good Yom Kippur. I'm John Herstein, president of the Board of Trustees. On behalf of the board, our clergy, and staff, I wish you all a happy, healthy, calm, and uneventful 5782. For all of you watching this from home, thank you for being here with us. For those that are here in person, we appreciate you being here on time or early and showing your name badges and vaccination cards. You've made it incredibly easy for our staff to welcome you while keeping our entire community safe. Without a doubt, 5781 has been anything but calm and uneventful, with more ups, downs, twists, and turns than the Incredicoaster at Disneyland. The past year has featured a contested presidential election, the introduction of vaccines to combat the virus, the Delta variant, school closures, reopenings, reclosures, a recall campaign, massive fires, and more. It's been enough to make your head spin and your heart ache. We humans are adept at evolving and managing change that occurs over years and decades, but not so great at change that comes day after day after day. Rabbi Feder alluded to these challenges in his sermon on Rosh Hashanah morning. He said, "The constant calculating of the right level of risk has been exhausting. Trying to hold this blessed community together and engaged in all that we do here at PTS while keeping everybody safe has taken a toll. I felt the loneliness, the weight of trying to make the right decisions, and the pressure of looking like I had it all together. I felt deep pain having pastored to so many who faced dark and difficult times during the pandemic. Many have lost loved ones and were denied the opportunity to mourn with the community. My heart has ached." The rabbi, of course, isn't alone. We've all struggled with feelings of isolation, loneliness, confusion, and angst. And all of our hearts have ached for one reason or another, or many. I know that many of you have found comfort in this community. Whether it was a pastoral conversation with our clergy, outreach from our caring community, participation in weekly services, volunteering with, or even just spending time with our Sholom women or our mensches, or even just leaning on the friends and family we all have here at PTS. In the times we're living in, having a faith community that reminds us of the values and direction that make our lives most whole is vital and deeply appreciated. Sustaining this community takes care, engagement, membership, commitment, and of course, money. Fortunately, we have weathered COVID well under the careful financial stewardship of our clergy, Karen and her staff, Allison and the preschool, our treasurer, Jason Pollard, and our dedicated finance committee. There is no doubt we will continue to operate for years to come. That said, every year's budget is a puzzle to be solved, and one of the biggest pieces of that puzzle is your membership commitment and the financial pledges made in this season. Our goal this year is to raise $330,000 through the High Holy Day Appeal and Tzedakah Circle giving above the sustaining membership commitment level. To date, 148 families have pledged $175,000, more than halfway to our goal. I particularly want to thank the 70 Tzedakah Circle donors who've already pledged over $130,000. With over 450 families yet to pledge, we ought to be able to exceed our goal, setting us up for financial health throughout this fiscal year and into the next. We truly are dependent on your generosity, and we hope that every PTS family will contribute. If you haven't had the chance to complete your pledge, we made the process very easy. You can return the pledge card you received in the mail or complete one on site if you're here today. You can also visit hhd.sholom.org and click the pledge button, or contact the office if you need help or want to discuss your pledge. However you make your pledge and whatever the amount, thank you in advance. As I did last year, I'd like to close with the words of Rabbi Sholom Rokeach, who said, "When we have an opportunity to join in a good and holy cause, we should do so without deliberating upon its merits and disadvantages. Otherwise, we may never participate in it." It is once again the time for all of us to participate. Gemar Chatima Tova, may you be sealed for good in the book of life.
We are gifts and we are blessings. We are history in song. We are hope and we are healing. We are learning to be strong. We are words and we are stories. We are pictures of the past. We are carriers of wisdom, not the first and not the last. Lador vador nagin kaleha. Lador vador, we protect this chain. From generation to generation, the door, these lips will praise your name.
Thank you, John, and thank you to our singers. That was one of our videos from our service last year, and brings such joy just to hear their voices and to talk about the next generation. And that's what this next prayer is all about on page 232. Please join with me in reading. Our God and the God of the generations before us, may a memory of us ascend and come before you. May it be heard and seen by you, winning your favor and reaching your awareness, together with the memory of our ancestors, the memory of your sacred city, Jerusalem, and the memory of your people, the family of Israel. May we be remembered for safety, well-being, and favor, for love and compassion, for life, and for peace on this day of atonement. Rabbi Yoel Kahn reminds us in our Machzor that God spoke to Moses from the burning bush. God referred to God's self as Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, I am who I am. On Yom Kippur, we are inclined to self-doubt and perhaps harsh criticism. But we can be uplifted with the knowledge that however we have failed ourselves or others or failed before God, God answers us in love. In the present tense of I am who I am, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. Just as you are, however broken in spirit, he says, however far you have wandered from your imagined path, however burdened or disappointed you may be, you and I stand here as a reflection of the Holy One. Take a few moments for our own personal prayer.
a conversation that my partner Daniel and I shared sometime last year. We were trying to put our finger on the exact aspect of the pandemic that grated on us the most. Was it, not being able to embrace loved ones? Was it not being able to look people in the eye and understanding their body language? How about missing out on milestones, like I didn't get to celebrate my rabbinic ordination, or I haven't been able to confidently plan my wedding? Perhaps it was the inescapable threat of sickness and death, or the grief at lives lost. It was all of this, and it was something else too. In sitting home day in and day out, our lives felt dull. I consider myself to be a curious person. I enjoy going out into the world and meeting new people, trying new foods, learning new things. But without experiences outside of my four walls, I felt intellectually and creatively malnourished. My curiosity just wasn't being stimulated. Curiosity is deeply human. As soon as children start talking, they want answers. In one 2007 study, researchers logged the questions asked by children aged 5 and under. They found that on average, children ask 107 questions per hour. Yes, it's a lot. One of my favorite parts of my role here at Temple Sholom is that I get to spend time with children. I love their sometimes ridiculous, but almost always profound questions. They wonder about things I have never even stopped to notice. I want you all to close your eyes and think about the last time you felt curious. What did it feel like? For me, the last time I felt curious was when I was driving home from PTS and listening to a podcast called This Is Actually Happening. I was listening to the story of one woman with a condition called trichotillomania, which is a fancy way of saying she compulsively pulls out her hair. I arrived home before the podcast was finished, but I sat in my car listening until the end. I had to know how this woman's story turned out. Feeling curious is exciting. It's energizing. Did you know that when we feel curious, the parts of our brains that are stimulated by hunger, thirst, lust, a sense of danger are also stimulated? When we satisfy our curiosity, when we hear the ending to a story, or we solve a mystery, or we make sense of a confusing optical illusion, the parts of our brains associated with pleasure are stimulated. So, satisfying our curiosity is like biting into a luscious piece of dark chocolate or drinking some wine, which I know is not the best metaphor for Yom Kippur. 18 months ago, I began to put curiosity aside because this is what I had to do to feel safe. With COVID-19, growing white supremacy, climate change, a fragile economy, an ever-looming threat of war in Israel, and the list goes on and on and on, it became easier to cloister myself from the world, not just physically, but also emotionally and mentally. The world transformed from beautiful place of opportunity to terrifying battleground, filled with situations and people that made me scared, or worse, angry. I know I'm not alone. We see a lack of curiosity in all corners of our society. One look at social media and you will understand what I am talking about. I, like maybe many of you, spend hours per day scrolling past mindless images and watching vapid videos in an almost trance-like state. These videos aren't filling my mind, they're distracting me from the truths I'd rather not face. Any online news article these days will undoubtedly be followed by a string of offensive comments from people who either agree with the article because it confirms their worldview or disagree because it goes against their worldview. In the age of cancel culture, one wrong question or opinion might mean that a person be ostracized from their social or professional circles. It makes sense. In this rigid environment, it's easier just not to ask questions. Susan Engel, author of The Hungry Mind, Origins of Curiosity in Childhood, writes about how our society stifles curiosity from a young age. When you visit schools in many parts of the world, it can be difficult to remember that they are filled with active, intelligent children because nobody is talking about their inner mental lives. How well they behave, how they perform, these seem much more important to many people in educational communities. Often, educational bureaucracies have shunted curiosity to the side. When teachers teach young children not to ask questions, it's not surprising that high-performing students recently studied were found to be less curious. They saw curiosity as a risk to their results. Because curiosity is such an important part of the human experience, when we close ourselves off from curiosity, it's as if we're denying ourselves a basic pleasure that comes with being alive. The pandemic has made me and so many others feel numb. Maybe some of you read a recent New York Times article on languishing. The author Adam Grant writes, "At first I didn't recognize the symptoms that we all had in common. Friends mentioned that they were having trouble concentrating. Colleagues reported that even with vaccines on the horizon, they just weren't excited about 2021. A family member was staying up late to watch National Treasure, even though she knows the movie by heart. And instead of bouncing out of bed at 6 a.m., I was lying there until 7, playing words with friends. It wasn't burnout. We still had energy, and it wasn't depression. We didn't feel hopeless. We just felt somewhat joyless and aimless. It turns out there's a name for that: languishing. I don't want to languish anymore. I want to find ways, big and small, to ignite my curiosity and fall back in love with the world. Scrolling through social media, reading cruel comments online, or judging others doesn't feel good, and it doesn't make the world better either. This year, I want to remember that there's much to gain by opening myself to the complexities of people and situations. I want to be curious because curiosity is deeply human. Curiosity is deeply Jewish, and curiosity has the potential to change the world. Our Jewish story hinges on the fact that one person took a chance on curiosity. I'm talking about Moses and the burning bush. Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he came with the flock to Horeb, the mountain of God. An angel of Adonai appeared to him in a blazing fire out of a bush. Moses gazed, and there was a bush completely aflame, but it wasn't being consumed. And Moses said, "Oh my goodness, I must turn aside to look at this marvelous sight. Why doesn't the bush burn up?" When Adonai saw that Moses had turned a little bit closer, Adonai called out to Moses and said, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Hineni, here I am." In this story, Moses stumbles upon a peculiar sight that challenges the laws of nature, right? Bushes, when they're on fire, they usually tend to burn up, but this one wasn't doing anything. Moses had always been a curious person. In fact, the first time we hear Moses speak in Torah, he's asking a question. When he sees two Hebrews fighting, he wants to know, why do you strike your fellow? In seeing the bush, Moses leans in to his tendency toward curiosity. 14th century Italian commentator Sforno says that Moses turned closer to the bush in this moment because he wanted to better understand this phenomenon. Because of Moses' choice to turn closer, Moses sees God. God tells Moses what to do, to go and free the Israelites and eventually lead them to the promised land. Imagine what would have happened had Moses turned the other way, ignored the burning bush because he was afraid. We may not all be Moses, but I would venture to say that curiosity can help us also find God, or at least be open to the holy moments in our lives. To be curious means looking out into the world and appreciating the beauty of all of God's creatures. Jewish thinkers across time have described the spiritual potential of noticing and seeking to understand the world's mysteries. 17th century Dutch Jewish thinker Baruch Spinoza, for example, believed that God and nature are one and the same. He wrote, "We get to know God and God's will all the better as we gain better knowledge of natural phenomena and understand more clearly how they depend on God and how they operate in accordance with nature's laws." 20th century French Jewish thinker Martin Buber wrote about the magic that happens when we're curious, not about the laws of nature, but about when we're curious about the other. He developed the concept of the I-thou relationship, positing that God reveals God's self when we take the time to understand the other person in front of us instead of worrying about what they can do transactionally for us. He wrote, "When two people relate to each other authentically and humanly, God is the electricity that surges between them." Finally, Albert Einstein was not only one of the greatest thinkers to ever live, but was also Jewish, and he was a deeply religious person. For him, satisfying curiosity was a religious experience. He wrote, "The most beautiful thing that we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. He to whom the emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, this person is as good as dead. His eyes are closed. The insight into the mystery of life, coupled though it be with fear, has also given rise to religion. To know that that which is impenetrable to us really exists, manifesting itself as the highest wisdom and the most radiant beauty, which our dull faculties can comprehend only in their most primitive forms. This knowledge, this feeling, is at the center of true religiousness." Curiosity is deeply human. We are curious at our youngest and most natural selves. Jewish texts and thinkers prove that curiosity is also a really Jewish thing to be. But more than that, during this past year, we've witnessed how curiosity can change the world. In 1978, Hungarian biochemist Katalin Karikó was a young scientist at the Biological Research Center in Szeged, Hungary. She had the radical idea of harnessing the power of messenger RNA, or synthetic genetic molecules that tell our bodies which proteins to make. She had a hunch that this mRNA could be used to create proteins that might be useful, like enzymes to reverse rare disease, or repairing tissue of the heart or the lungs, or by creating antibodies to vaccinate against viruses. The problem was that Kariko struggled to design mRNA that the human body did not immediately reject. For years, her experiments failed. In 1985, she was demoted from her position and moved to the University of Pennsylvania for a research position, the only position that she could get. By 1990, it seemed like her technology was starting to work, but only in mice. Kariko knew it could go further, and so she kept working. She slowly gained the attention of researchers and professors and venture capitalists. And of course, today we have the Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 vaccines. They both use the technology that Kariko was more curious to learn about. In a March article from The Atlantic, How mRNA Technology Can Change the World, Derek Thompson wrote, "We can call our record-breaking vaccine development process good luck, or we can call it what it really is, a ringing endorsement for the essential role of science in the world. mRNA is such a beautiful scientific story. So many researchers and philanthropists and government officials and organizations and companies took a huge risk on a technology whose initial response was marginal. And together, they figured out how to make it work." Soon after, Daniel and I shared our conversation, trying to put our fingers on exactly what about the pandemic was grating on us the most. I committed myself to reigniting my curiosity. I joined a book club, and through the books I've read, I've traveled to Italy and Croatia and Ireland, the Arctic, the Bronx, just to name a few of the locales. I've traveled through time, and I have met countless characters who are leading lives quite different from my own. I have attempted to approach difficult conversations from a place of listening and seeking to understand, rather than a place of judging or lecturing. It's not always easy, and I often fail. I try to remember that I don't have to be Moses, I don't have to be Spinoza or Buber or Einstein or Kariko for my curiosity to matter. The wonderful thing about curiosity is that we never know where it'll take us. Sometimes it might simply bring us pleasure. At other times, it might lead us to experiencing the transcendence of a holy moment. At its best, as humanity has witnessed again and again, curiosity has the potential to change the world.
Wow. Yasha Kochech. That was amazing.
Adonai,
Beautiful, thank you. The first time Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, was ever recited, according to the Talmud, was during a drought. Rabbi Eliezer tried to stop the drought by reciting a special Amidah, special prayer prescribed for just the occasion. But he failed in bringing the rain. Then Rabbi Akiva spontaneously recited 2 lines of prayer, each beginning with Avinu Malkeinu, and the rain came. The Talmud asks, how did this happen? A voice from heaven then explains why Rabbi Akiva was able to bring the rain, while Rabbi Eliezer was not able to. Rabbi Akiva he said that he passed over his midot. He passed over his midot. What does that mean? Rabbi Akiva, unlike Rabbi Eliezer, did something that is very difficult. He passed over his instinct to judge people. He didn't measure them up, size them up, or come to a conclusion about them. Rather, he set aside this instinct and moved on. There is so much to judge these days, and we are all tempted to judge others, especially those who annoy us or trouble us. But what brings the rain, this heavenly flow, is an approach in which we set aside those judgments and move on. We are going to continue with Avinu Malkeinu on page 252. Please rise.
Sorry. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamal aleinu, ve'alol aleinu, ve'topeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Kol Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Benora Shemo. גדלו לאדוני איתי, ונרוממה שמו יחדיו. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם עומד. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם עומד. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם עומד. Sorry.
The section of the Torah that we read this morning is one of the more beautiful sections of our entire Holy Scriptures. We'll be reading key sections from chapter 29, chapter 30, and the book of Deuteronomy. It's from Parashat Nitzavim. And the important reminders in this Torah reading this morning complement the messages of Unatana Tokef and Avinu Malkeinu so beautifully. That our actions matter deeply. We may not be able to control the world, but we can control what we do. And we stand before God this day and every day, ready to enact the brit between God and the children of Israel. And that the teachings and the morals and the state of holiness are reachable. They are indeed attainable by every one of us. Ours is not a tradition where only a select few have the privilege of knowing the inner secrets of our faith. Rather, it's accessible to everybody. And that the essence of our tradition is on the tip of our tongue. It's as close as our fingertips to our face. And we can do it. So, in our Machzorim, we are on page 258. And I'd like to call up participants for the very first Aliyah, our Torah reader, Val Langmuir, and those who will chant the Torah Brachot, Kira and Eric and Lauren Schlesinger. As Cantor Anna sets the Torah, in this first Aliyah, Moses tells the children of Israel that all of them stand before God this day to enter into the brit, the covenant as sworn to their ancestors. And Moses makes this covenant not just with those who are there that day, but with those throughout time. In this way, you and I and all of us were there too. We start with the bracha.
Wait, you come real close. Thank you.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torto. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem livnei Adonai Elohechem rashechem shivtechem ziknechem v'shotrechem kol ish Yisrael tapchem nishechem v'gerecha asher b'kerev machanecha mechotev eitzecha Ad shoev meimecha le'avracha bivrit Adonai Elohecha uvalato asher Adonai Elohecha koret imcha hayom leman hakim otecha hayom lo le'am vehu yeyelecha le'Elohim Ka'asher diber lach, v'ka'asher nishba la'avotecha, la'Avraham le'Yitzchak u'Yaakov, v'lo itchem levadachem, anochi koret et habrit hazot v'et ha'ala hazot ki et asher yishno po, imanu omed hayom, Livnei Adonai Eloheinu ve'et asher einenu po imanu hayom.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet b'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
All four of you, that was just beautiful. The section that Val read from was from chapter 29 on page 266. Now we jump to page 268. We'll be reading the second aliyah from chapter 30 of Deuteronomy, verses 15 through 17. And for this aliyah, we're going to read about Moses telling the people that before them are life and death, well-being and hardship, and commands them to observe the mitzvot so that they may live and thrive and be blessed by God. For the second aliyah, it is my pleasure to call up Tasha Bergson-Michelson and Nathaniel Bergson-Michelson. Nathaniel will be chanting the brachot. Nathaniel will be chanting from the Torah, and Tasha will be chanting the blessings.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Amen. Re'en natahati lefanecha hayom et hachayim ve'et hatov ve'et hamavet ve'et hara asher anochi mitzavcha hayom le'ahava et Adonai Elohecha lalechet bidrochav v'lishmor mitzvotav b'chuchotav u'mishpatav v'chayita v'ravita uv'rachecha Adonai Elohecha ba'aretz asher ata v'ashemaha l'rishtaha v'im yifnei levavecha v'lo tishma v'nidachta v'hishtachavita l'Elohim acherim v'havadatam.
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah temet, b'chayei olam nata b'tochenu, baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
Yasher Koach, that was beautiful, the two of you. For the third of the three aliyot, Noah Cohen will be coming to us by a pre-recorded video on the screens. And I'd like to call up for the chanting of the brachot, Sherry and Scott Haber. For this section, we are reading the 30th chapter of Deuteronomy, verses 18 through 20, also on page 268. And in this section, Moses calls the ultimate witnesses before the children of Israel, heaven and earth, both to witness what is happening and to exhort the people, uvaharta b'chayim, to choose life, so that they and their children may live by loving and living and staying close to God.
Baruch hu et Adonai hambarach, Baruch Adonai hambarach li'olam va'ed, Baruch Adonai hambarach li'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Higadati lachem hayom ki avod tovedon lo ta'arichon yamim al ha'adama asher ata aver et hayarden levo shama larishta ha'idati vachem hayom et hashamayim ve'et haaretz chachayim ve'chamevet ve'natati lefanecha habracha v'haklala uvacharta b'chayim lema'an tihiyeh ata v'zarecha le'ahava et Adonai Elohecha lishmo becholod ulevada kavo ki hu hayecha ve'orech yamecha lashevet al hadama asher nishba Adonai le'avatacha le'avraham le'yitzhak u'Yaakov lated lachem.
Thank you, Noah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher Koach, thank you so much. During the Torah service, as is our custom, we pray for healing. And sometimes we're praying literally for healing. And sometimes the appropriate thing to pray for is comfort and shalom, a sense of wholeness, even in ill health. If there's a person that you would like to pray for this morning, I'd encourage you to either add that name to the chat or to stand where you are seated and to say that name out loud. If you can, in a voice loud enough for all of us to hear, so that we can pray with you for those people. We'll start on this side of the sanctuary. As a broader community, we pray for the wellness and the wholeness of Bunny Starr and Lily Spitz, Ileana Farkas, Barbara Masters, Brady Koza, Erwin Levin, Kurt Meyer, Linda Harris, Seymour Messinger, Simcha Collins, Alex Newton, Alan Hafter, Charlotte Murdoff, Willie Herring, Kelsey Friedman, Barbara Katz, Richard Hafter, Jim Garcia, Dorothy Creeks, Sherry Schneider, David Habib, Jerry Richard Simpson, James Biggert, Dennis Acott, Alejandro Modena, Marcel and Rebecca Fraser, Rob Keller, Donna Otis, Esther Dover, Carl Melman, Maxine Rogo, Nick Ravinsky, Lana and Ralph Stern, and Paul Ho. Holding all of these souls in our hearts, we sing together Nachamu, inspired by the words of Isaiah, asking God to comfort the people. This version of the Misha Berach is not in our Machzor.
Amen.
Thank you, Charles, Kimber, Rabbi, and Cantor, for that beautiful healing prayer. That was gorgeous and moving. We'll turn now to the Haftarah. The Haftarah blessing is on page 275. The Haftarah chanting that we'll be looking at, chapter 58 from the book of Isaiah, verses 8 through 10, is on page 278. I'd like to invite Kim Olive to chant the brachot, and Sarah Wazalowski to chant these three powerful verses from Isaiah. Our Machzor teaches that the Torah envisions a community based on social solidarity and common humanity. One look around our world today indicates that's a countercultural set of ideas. Let me repeat that. Our Torah envisions a community based on a sense of social solidarity and the common humanity of one another. We're commanded to open our hands to those in need, and Isaiah's words continue to resonate to this day. Do not hide yourself from your own flesh and blood, says the prophet Isaiah. Do not turn your back on the poor. Recognize your kinship with them. For the prophet, we are all one family, united in our humanity. And without one another, our community is not whole. Note verse 10 that Sarah will chant. If you offer your nefesh to the hungry. This might be translated, if you offer your life to the hungry, or if you draw out your soul to the hungry. This suggests a profound giving of the self, not only the act of sharing food with those in need, but also sharing one's attention, offering empathy and the warmth of human interaction. Let us listen and let us take note.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nveim tovim v'ratza v'divrehem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah u'Moshe avdo u'v'Yisrael amo u'v'nvi'eh ha'emet v'tzedek.
At yivaka kashachar orecha va'aruchatecha mechera titzma v'chalach lefanecha tzidkecha kevod Adonai ya'asvecha. Az tikra v'Adonai yaneh teshava vayomar hineni im tasir mitochecha mota shelach etzba v'daber aven v'tafek laraev nafshecha v'nefesh na'ana
משביע וצרה בחושך אורך ואפלתך כצהריים.
Od, that was beautiful. We're now on page 280 for the blessing after the chanting of the Haftarah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Sur kol haolamim Sadik bechol hadorot Ha'el ha'ne'eman Ha'omer ve'oseh Hamdaber umkayem Shekol divarav Emet v'tzedek al haTorah v'al ha'avodah v'al ha'neveim v'al yom ha'kippurim hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu limchila v'lislicha u'kapara Lechavod ultifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umvarechim otach yitbarak shimcha b'fi kol chai tamid le'olam va'ed Udvarcha emet v'kayam lad Baruch atah Adonai Melech mohel v'soleach La'avonoteinu V'la'avonot amo be'Yisrael Umavir ashmotenu B'chol shana v'shana Melech al kol ha'oretz Mekadesh Yisrael v'yom ha'kippurim.
Amen.
Yasher Koach,
Yasher
the two of you.
Koach,
That was
both of you.
simply beautiful.
Amazing.
We're on
Beautiful.
page 291 now. If you're able, please rise as we lift and dress the Torah.
F minor first, please. F minor. Thank you. וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה.
this time in our service, we've arrived at Vidui, the confessional. It feels like we've been confessing for days now during Rosh Hashanah, the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, hopefully throughout these last days of awe, and now we're getting closer. We're at Yom Kippur, and we are getting closer to the closing of the metaphoric gates that will seal our fate in the coming year. There's a heightened sense of drama. My talit is falling. Hold on. There's a heightened sense of drama and of desperation that just gets higher and higher as this day will continue. We declare Ashamnu, Al Chet, and Shema Kolenu. We're about to do this, and as we do it, I want you to pay attention to the language of these confessional declarations. It's all written in the plural. Of these wrongs, we are guilty. We betray. We steal. Hear our voice. I always mistook Yom Kippur for more of a singular, insular experience, and it is for sure, right? We can only do the work of teshuvah for ourselves. But the language we're about to hear also reminds us that nobody is perfect, that everybody misses the mark, and we're all here in this experience, watching or here in the sanctuary together. We may not have missed the mark in all of the ways that we're about to list, but I'd venture to say that all of us, when put together into a single whole, have created one alphabet of wrongdoings. Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote, "Morally speaking, there is no limit to the concern one must feel for the suffering of human beings. That indifference to evil is worse than evil itself. That in a free society, some are guilty, but all are responsible." This confession we're about to do is not a singular experience. Imagine yourself as one part of the whole. Our actions impact others. And hopefully in the coming year, we can be a little more mindful of our choice to either bring the whole down with us or make the world better. We turn to page 26 for a shot. 26, not 26. We turn to page 296 for Ashamnu. Please rise.
Ay,
now take a seat. We turn to page 300. Al chet shehatanu lefanecha. The ways we have wronged you under duress and by choice, and harm we have caused in your world consciously and unconsciously. Al chet shehatanu lefanecha. The ways we have wronged you through your thoughtlessness, and the harm we have caused in your world through impulsive acts of malice. Al chet shehatanu lefanecha. The ways we have wronged you by abusing our power, and the harm we have caused you in your world through disrespect to parents and teachers. Al chet shehatanu lefanecha. The ways we have wronged you by giving in to our hostile impulses, and harm we have caused in your world through inflexibility and stubbornness. Al chet shehatanu lefanecha. The ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit, and harm we have caused in your world by making light of serious matters. Al chet shehatanu lefanecha. The ways we have wronged you in our routine conversations, and harm we have caused in your world through envy. Al chet shehatanu lefanecha. The ways we have wronged you openly and secretly, the harm we have caused in your world by hating without cause. Al chet shehatanu lefanecha. The ways we have wronged you by losing self-control, and harm we have caused in your world through consumption of food and drink. Al chet shehatanu lefanecha. The ways we have wronged you through sexual immorality, and harm we have caused in your world by hardening our hearts. Al chet shehatanu lefanecha. The ways we have wronged you through greed and exploitation, and harm we have caused in your world through dishonesty in business. We turn to page 305. We focused inward, narrowing our vision. We were preoccupied with ourselves. We turned our backs on the poor and the defenseless. We were contemptuous of the weak. We tolerated violence against children, neglect of the old, exploitation of the innocent. We told ourselves there was nothing we could do. We wasted the resources of the earth. We denied our own responsibility and put it out of our minds. We kept silent when we should have spoken out. We gave in to cynicism and despair. We sought entertainment instead of enlightenment. We were lazy, indifferent, and callous. We forgave ourselves too easily for our failures. We forgot that we always have a choice. We turn to page 306. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov taught, always look for the good in yourself, and remember, joy is not incidental to your spiritual quest. It is vital. For so it is written in Isaiah, you will go out through joy and be led forth in peace. Focus on the good in yourself. Take joy in what is good, and you will be led forth from the inner darkness. We now turn to page 316 as we hear the words of Shema Kolenu, which is so beautiful. And as we sing it, it's going to sound, I said this before, we have a heightened sense of urgency and desperation. So I really invite you to pay attention to that cry, God, hear our voice.
Shema Kolenu, Adonai. Hashiveinu Adonai elecha, Hashiveinu elecha v'nashuva, Chadesh yameinu, yameinu, kekedem. Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chus v'rachem aleinu, aleinu, v'kabel berachamim, berachamim, uveratzon, et tefilateinu.
Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, hear our call, Adonai Eloheinu. And may we hear yours in our apologies and confessions, in the meditations of our heart, in the accountings of our soul. Hear our call, and may we hear yours in words of counsel and consolation, in the silence of one who listens, in the strength of a hand that upholds. Hear our call, Adonai Eloheinu, as we strive to hear yours. On this day of the heart, this day of repair and healing. Before we head toward our closing song, I want to thank you all for joining us this morning. We have a full day ahead. We have the tots service happening in the tent right now, so as you exit, please be mindful of them. We have the panel happening at 1:15. The theme is Beginning Our Lives Anew, Focusing Our Lives for Deeper Meaning. We have our family service at 1:30, also in our outdoor tent. Yizkor, our memorial service at 3 p.m. Our teen workshop at 3 p.m. Our healing service at 3:45, and finally at Ne'ilah starting at 5. I also want to remind you that as we exit this sanctuary, there are people in here who are still practicing physical distancing, so be mindful of that, and that includes everyone up here on the bima with us. Our closing song today will be Hayom Ta'amseinu. We wish you all a meaningful Yom Kippur holiday. For those who are fasting, we wish you an easy fast. And Gemar Chatima Tova, may you be sealed in the book of life. Thank you.